Welcome to Southern Soul Chats, where this season we will be diving into the stories of individuals who have navigated the deeper waters of faith. I'm your host, Dr. Miranda Ferguson, and together we'll explore the journeys of people who've taken that courageous step forward in their faith. Get ready to be inspired as we uncover the incredible stories of unwavering belief and the remarkable impact it's had. If you're excited to join us on this faith-filled exploration, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Let's step forward. Hey, y'all. We're so glad to have you back. Thanks for joining us in another episode of Southern Soul Chats. Today, I'm excited to have two of my favorite people from the Met Church. Well, really, maybe just one. The other one comes with it as a package. I'm kidding. No.
I'm the one that comes with it.
Yeah, that's right.
I got it right.
You got it right. You win the prize today. So today's episode, again, is called When God Flips the Script. And let me tell you, it's very appropriate for this story and really probably for a lot of stories in your own lives. So without further ado, let me welcome Pastor Matt Roberson and his wife, Jennifer Roberson. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, we're glad to be here.
I would give you sound effects, but it's not ready. I'm still learning. So I'm so thankful for you being here. As our listeners will hear in a minute, this is kind of a chaotic time for you guys. And so for you to take the moment out to scoot over here and do this is really appreciated. And I know my listeners are going to love this story. So we're just going to jump in. So Matt, why don't you tell these fine people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Matt Roberson. For the last 7 years, I've been the pastor here in Houston of the Met Church. Prior to that, worship leader, served in different churches throughout the state of Oklahoma and North Texas, and moved to Houston back in 2011 would have been January of 11 is when we moved here. So we've been here about 13 years, and God has just done some really great things in us here. We've grown a ton here. And I was the worship pastor actually at the Met when we came. And after a few years of that, became a campus pastor in the multi-site setting. And then in July of 2016, just felt this unbelievable call to lead this church, and wasn't qualified, frankly, but God just had other plans. And so I followed through with that and became the lead pastor of the Met. And we've been doing that ever since. And you're right, this is a bit of a chaotic time for us because the path forward looked one way and God saw it another way. But I'm glad to be with you today. And of course, my wife, Jennifer, on the podcast. So it's really glad.
It's my first podcast.
Ever?
Yeah, ever. I listen and
well,
consume
then you should tell them
time,
who you are.
First time at the microphone. My name's Jennifer. I go with Matt. I usually say I go with Matt when I can find him. Grew up in a small town in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, and had a wonderful little church there that I had places to play that kind of raised me up and invested in me. Went to Oklahoma Baptist, and that's where Matt and I met. I was a nursing major with a music minor, and it threw me into some classes with him. Got married after college and moved around a couple different churches, had a couple kids, two wonderful girls. Claire is a junior in high school. She's 17. And Chloe is a 19-year-old majoring in family science at Oklahoma Baptist.
So are you a singing nurse?
A singing nurse. Well, I do sing, but I
not at work.
Sing at work. No.
You said that, and I just thought, a singing nurse.
It's a new reality TV show.
It's a whole new gig in life, people.
It was so crazy and obviously it was a God thing. I just wasn't ready to let music go. I mean, it had no professional purpose for me whatsoever. I have taught piano lessons, but it didn't have any purpose. My parents were crazy enough to pay for it. So, and then it landed me.
Landed you a husband.
Landed me a husband, so it worked out good.
So wait, does that mean your parents kind of paid for you?
Yes,
your husband?
Yes.
Wow.
I just know that it worked out, Miranda. That's all I know. It worked out.
I think that's all that matters. That's no big deal. Okay, so this is a family affair today. Here we go.
For sure.
So in most recent days, even though let me just tell our listeners, we're in 2023, even though you're hearing this in 2024. So that way you'll understand this announcement he's about to tell us about didn't just come when you're listening. It came last year. And so we recently had an announcement made by you and your family.
And so we're not here today to like make the announcement for the world. We're here to talk about the announcement and the emotion and the realness of it. So what was that announcement, Pastor Matt?
Yeah, like I said, I've been the pastor here for the last 7 years. And let's just be honest. I get to serve in what most guys in this part of the vocation would say is a dream job. I have a fairly large congregation, a couple thousand people, fourth largest city in the country. The suburbs are teeming with life. There's all kinds of things happening. And the last 5 or 6 years has been tough, but the last 3 years have been so fruitful at the Met. Like, it's just new people just, their lives are being transformed, and it's a healthy staff, and it's just a lot of fun right now. And so, when you start planning out, you got to plan a year and a half in advance to start thinking about things. So my vision is like, okay, here's what's going to happen in 24. Here's where we're looking to be early 25. And I've got things just going like most leaders do in either their businesses or their nonprofits, or some, if you're listening to this and maybe you are a pastor, your church. But what I didn't see coming was that our season of ministry was done. At the Met.
Yeah, you're not done.
I'm not done.
You're not done.
So I had ideas of future and planning and, hiring and growing and facility changes and all these things. And about 2 months ago, Jennifer and I both just started feeling like God was stirring in our heart, which we always know is the Christianese thing, to know that you just feel like change is coming. You don't really know what it is. Mm-hmm. And it could be a number of things. But in this particular circumstance, the change was that we would be stepping down as pastor of the Met Church and stepping into being a pastor at First Baptist Church in Marlow, Oklahoma. And if you are listening and you know where that is, blessed are you. It's an hour and a half, about an hour south and a little bit west of Oklahoma City. And
y'all, it's country. I'm not going to lie. I just got back from Oklahoma, and all there is grass and trees.
That's it.
And a few buildings.
Yeah. It's so country.
It's not Houston.
Here's the fun story about it, though. We used to live there. I was a youth pastor there in my late 20s and early 30s. And God actually launched my traveling ministry as a worship leader from that community. And so we have a ton of really, really good friends there. I just don't think either one of us ever saw ourselves going back there in the prime of life. I think maybe later, maybe upon, wouldn't you say that?
For sure. Yeah.
Like when life kind of slowed down a little bit.
Oh, I don't know. Like in your 60s.
Yeah.
I would say that's when life slowed down.
Been great.
Yeah. I didn't think it. I turned 46 on Thanksgiving Day this year. I had no idea that in the prime of life that God's like, yep.
That's
all right,
it.
That whole mega church thing, I'm gonna remove that now, and I'm gonna send you on a detour. And to use your words, I'm gonna flip the script, and I'm gonna shock you. And I'm telling you, that's how it's been. These last couple of months have just been this whirlwind of God's pulling and calling, and us. Honestly, if I'm being honest, it was more Jennifer's response on the first part than mine. I kind of ignored it a lot. I kind of pulled a Jonah. I was like, I don't really want to do this.
Jonah's my man. Jonah is my man. Yeah. I'm all about the belly of the whale.
I'm just like, I did not want to spend 3 nights anywhere. I was like, I got right up to the edge of the of the water, and I'm like, I think I should just surrender here. But so that's what we did. We announced it actually just this past week, which, if you're listening, that would have been November the 12th, 2023. We made that announcement. And it really was that cliche word, but it's bittersweet. Yeah. That's really what it is. So we're sitting in the midst of it. We're just trying to we're trying to doing all the paperwork for new employment. We're selling and buying houses and trying to figure out how that's going to look.
Did you find a house already?
Well, there's only about 5 in Marlow.
To choose from.
So yes, we have a line in the water on one. So
I guess that makes it easy. When we moved here, this was our 26th house.
Oh yeah, there's not that many options. No.
Yeah,
that's too many.
Well, it's Houston.
Yeah,
right. That's how it goes. So the whole time you're talking, all I can hear in my head is Proverbs 16:9. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And boy, is that not this situation being played out right now. So you described to everybody in the congregation that this was not just get a phone call, turn my resume in, let's talk to my wife and my kids, we're going. Far, far, far.
Well, the story really starts with her.
Yeah, and she wrote a blog. So let me tell you guys, Jennifer put a blog out about this. And so Jennifer, why don't you share a little bit about your heart from your blog and take us begin this journey for us, Jennifer?
I feel like just the stirrings for both of us were probably happening towards the end of the summer in August. In all fairness, I could easily just justify those because we were in a major life transition anyway with launching our first kid to college. So if it felt like change was coming, and it did, but I didn't have any specificity to it, I could just be like, okay, well, it's just because we're adjusting to not having a kid in our home that filled our calendar with a lot of events and sports and all of that. And it just felt different. But it seemed like something more than that. But how Matt and I mean, this is our 5th church transition, I would say, in ministry that we've made together. I would say is our general pattern. We're just in dialogue with each other constantly, not just in transition, but just in general, just about what God's teaching us and what he's doing. And I think both of us were kind of feeling imprints of that, starting at the end of the summer. And then as time just kind of went on, when you kind of start getting some scripture, I called them imprints. I feel like that's a little light. For us, it's like when you're reading the scripture and then you feel like there's like this spiritual highlight that happens on the page and you can feel it on the inside. I mean, it's very dramatic. It's very personal. It wasn't, sometimes it's maybe vague and it's like, oh Lord, is that for me? Like, would you confirm that? I feel like we started to receive a handful of those. And I say Matt was having those as well. But I was very confused. I would say this is the first transition we've ever made that we weren't completely tracking together on what our emotions and acknowledgement of the situation was. And to be clear, I wasn't raising my hand saying, oh Lord, send us. Like that could not have been farther from the truth.
You weren't waving like a flag in the front yard trying to get his attention?
Are you kidding me? I have a junior in high school. Like, why would anyone consider doing that? I love the fruitfulness of our church and the beauty of this bride that we get to be a part of. Mm-hmm. I was very much recognizing, like, if you were going to graph just the changes and some significant events in the last 10 years, I was very much feeling like Matt, like, oh my goodness, could it be that we're entering like this just new season of lock arms and stability, and just, I feel like a critical mass had been reached with relational discipleship and just seeing the evidences of that. I mean, again, nobody's looking for to go anywhere, to be clear. But as I was seeing these imprints, I just kept kind of looking at Matt going, okay, he's not slowing down at all. Like, he's still
planning for 2024, 25.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I was honestly a little confused by that. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm kind of reading this wrong. Maybe I'm over. And I actually, to be completely honest, I knew that some transition was happening at my work, and I actually started orienting at a different place at the end of September, October, because I'm thinking, okay, well, if we're not going anywhere, it would seem like maybe this is something that maybe it's just personal for me. And so I kind of started walking that out. And then it just kind of got to the point, and I mentioned in the blog, and I think Matt would say the significant event in our extended family happened about the same time that we were engaging Marlo more seriously, that we had a suicide in our extended family that just kind of pulled the rug out from us, actually within hours of us receiving an offer from them. And I just said in my blog, it just threw us into a tsunami of grief. Like, we couldn't even tell. I mean, it was just grief upon grief. Couldn't tell which was what God was doing in our personal life. It's trying to minister to our extended family and our own children in that. And so obviously the team was very gracious to give us space in that. And weeks went by. Weeks, like, we're tearing up the script on every transition we've ever made with that. Like, just, I don't know how this is going to end. I'm pretty sure we should be talking to them, but we don't know what we're going to say yet. Until it kind of got to a point where Matt and I just had a face-to-face on the back porch a few weeks after that. And I just pleaded with him. I said, do we have freedom to stay? Because if we do, we're going to stay. Like, we're all in. But if we don't have freedom to say, and he's been too clear illuminating this path, then we have to go. And I'm saying words that, of course,
Right.
has said to me. And he just shakes his head and he's like, I think he's been clear. And I will say that week following, just beginning to tell the leadership and things, it was one of the hardest things that we've ever done. Since coming up off the floor, spiritually speaking, with that like sackcloth and ashes, I would say we are just feeling so ministered to by the bride and just by the Lord in our grief over leaving. And, it's these mixed feelings because we love Marlowe. I think they know that. Mm-hmm. I have always called Oklahoma home, and I love that my husband has adopted it and also calls it home, even though he was kind of a vagabond growing up as a pastor's kid.
Chicago, Idaho, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I wasn't
So
from
just
anywhere.
calls it
You don't really have a place.
Not
right.
really.
But he's fully adopted that. And so, again, would we have wanted to be there eventually? Yes, if that would have been in the Lord's plan for us. But, I've checked that at the door a long time ago. Like, we don't just pack up and move where we want to go. That's just not how we roll. And just even referencing the story about the Israelites and the pillar of fire and the cloud, one of Matt's mentors who's completely outside of this situation, and I loved having his counsel at some point in this, saying, just reminding us the commitment that we have being on mission with him and in ministry. You move when that cloud moves. You move when that pillar of fire moves. And though we had very much vested here and put down deep roots emotionally and physically, he had made it clear it was time to go.
Yeah, and you referenced that in your blog when you talk about Paul. You said, I don't know how Paul did this.
I have no idea.
Like, I don't know how Paul did this. And you said Matt told you that, well, Paul never took roots. He was...
I do see that he stayed in certain places a few months or even a couple of years, but 13 years in a place almost just goes against who he seems to be. I've found a ton of comfort in the past few weeks reading the Pauline epistles and the letter and the angst, just this angst that's in his heart. Like, man, I wish I could be with you again. I hear about your faith. And I was finding myself and my emotion in the pages of it. But, Paul was always on the move. He was on mission. He continued to live out this idea that my life is not my own. Mm. And so, to Jennifer's point, when he says go, you go.
So, Matt, fill in the blanks of all the things she's referring to as far as the signs. Like, go all the way back to June, 1st of June-ish.
June-ish.
I'm not sure, because I'm not sure exactly when in June-ish it was.
We have 26. We have 26 different things.
I have 26 houses.
There you go. We have the Twilight Zone. We have 26 different things journaled, and even a couple more since then of things. These are what we call nuances, whispers from the Holy Spirit. Just these subtle things. Some of them were more direct than others. For me, I had handed 2 resumes into this church of friends of mine because I knew it wasn't me, right? Like, I need to find them a guy that I trust. They trust me, so I'm going to trust. And they're like, man, this is great. Thank you. What about you? And I said, no, it's not going to happen.
Because they called you because they're in a rough season, right?
Rough season, but they've just been without leadership.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah, they're in a transition. They don't have a leader. And so they called the leaders that they've known in the past that they have relationship with. They're like, hey, do you know our situation? You know who we are.
Yeah.
Who would fit?
They trust you to know how the mold would do.
Who would fit?
Right.
And so I gave him a couple of names and thought nothing of it. And
let me send you some friends of mine.
Yeah. The next week, I got a call from one of said friends, and he said, hey, dude, I just have a sneaking suspicion in my spirit. I don't know I don't even have the equity to do this with you, but I think it's you. I think you're supposed to come home and help. And as soon as he said that, my phone buzzes, and it's a text from someone who lives in Marlowe. Hey, we got a mess here. Would you come home and help? It was within 10 seconds. I just kind of stood there, and I was like, that was weird.
What was your gut check at that moment? Like, you just heard somebody say, you just sent resumes, and you just heard somebody that you sent their resume, like they could potentially take that job, and they go, I think it's you. Like, was there a moment where you were like, this person's lost their mind?
So my gut, I didn't have a gut check at all. I thought maybe it was just, honestly, didn't think anything of it because I don't have that kind of pull in relationship with that individual, at this point. I know him really well. He's a great dude. He's a great pastor. But that level of intimacy was pretty bold, and I didn't know what to do with it. Right. So it wasn't really a check. I was just like, I was confused. I was like, what? And then, but my really good friend who lives in Marlow, her name's Danae. She sent that text that said, hey, could you come home and help? And they both used the same phrase. Would you come home and help us? And then the next morning, I'm in Acts 16 in my daily devotional just on my pathway. And it's the Macedonian call where the people of Macedonia tell Paul, hey, is there any way you would come over to Macedonia and help us? And those 3 words, and help us, they kept appearing to me out of nowhere. I was like, okay, this is really frustrating because I know what this means.
Yeah.
At that point, the next morning, whatever time of the day that was, I remember going, oh, I think this could be something. And that little percentage of possibility is why I went ahead and began to walk in that process. It was just a hint. I would say Jennifer at that point, her level of possibility was higher than mine.
It still was low.
It was still low.
It wasn't like,
it was just a little hair.
It wasn't
above
God
his.
wants us there, so let's walk this out. It was not that. And I hated that it may have, we were both concerned it communicated something to the team and the church that we didn't want to communicate to them. But nonetheless, we felt without question we were supposed to at least take that step. I liken it to when Matt put his resume in as senior pastor at the Met. Very similar to me in the sense that I affirm this next step. I can see it fades to black after it. I can't play that out and I won't play it out. Like whether that was like Lord just kind of shielding it or me intentionally not wanting to acknowledge it or whatever. But that very often it's just, this is the next step I see before me. I'll not plan it all out, but we can be in agreement that yes,
it's on the so it's on the table.
Like we're going to submit
there.
it. Yeah.
So you get this call, you get this text. You're still you're having your quiet time. You're still kind of like. So then what happens?
After that, I knew that it was a possibility. So I just sent the resume kind of reluctantly, but I knew how the process works. And I did a phone interview with them that was about an hour. I did they asked if Jennifer and I would do an in-person interview. And so we worked that out because of some logistical things. And we ended up, that was like a 4-hour conversation. And even at the end of that, I could tell that if I'm being frank, like I answered all the questions correctly.
Right. All the right pastory.
There's all the right things to say. And yet there was more to it than that, and the team at that point had called back and said, hey, it's one and done, one or none for us. If it's not you, we're starting the process completely over again. Now, mind you, this is now the middle of October, and their process had started in April. And they said, if it's not you, you've just like given us a vision for who this could be. And so
we got to start fresh.
If it's not you, then we're starting over. And I was like, maybe that's what this was all like. I just
like a reset.
I just kept trying to find reasons that it wasn't me. And so that was on a Saturday. They called us the very next day, just 2 interviews. Now, mind you, we're kind of a known commodity as a family because we did live there. But after those 2 interviews, he called us the very next day. He said, you're the guy. The whole team was on speakerphone. I was sitting next to Jennifer, like kind of coming out of a Sunday afternoon nap, that kind of like, and I was like, what? And then we got the call about the suicide of one of our family members. So all of the weight of that all hit at the same moment. And in some respects, I'm grateful that I had something else crisis to really run to because I didn't want to handle or deal with that in that moment. And so I went and, spent time with my cousin and his wife, Mike and Carrie. It was so hard, right? Like that was totally a different thing. And my mind was just in that space. And when I didn't tell this one at the church, but like even when we went to the funeral, the previous pastor of First Baptist Church Marlow was preaching the funeral. And he used the same phrase. And he kind of knew that I was in the process, but he didn't know where they were in the process. never really alluded to the process at all while we were with him, but he did ask me one-on-one, like, hey, have you ever thought about, are you thinking about coming home and helping? He used that stupid phrasing in it. I was just like, my gosh. And there's no way, I knew, even if he knew that I was a part of the process, there's no way he knew that phrase had any significance in my life.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just those, sometimes I think, and this is maybe the principle if you're listening today, is just to understand if you're going to value the voice of God at the highest level, then you have to tune it in with the finest, you got to be really, really deliberate in how you listen. And so I'm not saying, because you can get what you're looking for, right? It's like I tell everybody, I bought a red truck. Now everybody has a red truck because I see them everywhere. So Jennifer's like, are all these things that she's hearing just because I probably said this internally, like, oh, it's probably just because you want to go to a small town and you want to live in a small town. So you're seeing these signs, quote unquote, everywhere. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm having scary stuff happen in the midst of that, process where they had offered the job and I was doing the mourning process with my family. Even weird things, right? Like there was a character on a TV show whose middle name was Marlowe. Whose middle name is Marlowe?
Is your dog really named Marlowe?
He is, and we named him after that town because that's where we got him. So
I'm sorry, but that's really funny.
Yeah.
Claire, in a godlike way.
Yeah, Claire said that we're going to take him back to
his homeland,
to his people.
To his people.
So we laughed about that. But it was just a, you're watching TV and you're trying to mindlessly escape the thought. And even in your mindless escape while you're watching TV, somebody's middle name is Marlowe. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even hear that name ever. I just don't hear it.
Yeah.
I pulled out a file folder for some paperwork I needed, and it had been in our file cabinet for probably 15 years, so much that the white label had yellowed just a little bit, and it said FBC Marlowe, Oklahoma. And I just looked at Jennifer and I said, how long has this been in here? So it was like scripture and then whisper. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how God does it, right? Like I'm going to do something and then I'm going to, the prophet used to prophesy, you're going to hear a voice behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it. He didn't say you're going to see a big neon sign in front of you and you just, no, it's going to be a small, gentle, just the blowing of a wind, a breeze, and you're going to know that it's me. And that's what we experienced over and over and over again.
I got to tell you, I don't know if you even told Jennifer this, I felt really fortunate to be one of the first people you saw when you walked off the stage Sunday after the first sermon. And I'm not good with like saddie kind of emotion because I'm not an emotional person like that. My husband is, and so thank goodness one of us isn't because he is the one in this relationship. But I had texted you about a trip to Oklahoma I was taking, and you were asking me how I knew the people I was going to see, and you made a joke about you were the mayor of Oklahoma, and if I needed anybody else to let you know. So I thought it would be real fitting when you come off the stage, so it wouldn't be like a real sad, let's cry about it moment to be like, well, I didn't really realize you were being serious about being the mayor of Oklahoma. Like you're going to have to run back there and just to kind of break the ice because I knew like your whole face, you could just tell like you were just a gut punch. That was so hard. And not only did you have to do it one time, but you had to do it 2 times. And so I told you, I shared with you, and I got to tell you, I have spent days since Sunday, actually before Sunday, really asking God why. But in June, 1st of June, I was in my kitchen, and the Holy Spirit told me you were leaving the Met Church. And I thought I was a nut job. I did. I thought I was crazy. I thought, why? It's so strange. And so I go to Jeremy and I said, I'm having this really weird thing happen in my head. I don't understand it. It's about Matt. And he looks at me and goes, is it that he's leaving the Met Church? And I said, how did you know that? And he's like, it's weird things happening in my head. I don't understand. And so we just chalked it up to, it's just weird. It was just a weird thing. And we didn't really think much more about it, just kind of pushed it off. And so when you came off, I told him that, and I said, in the last 8 weeks, and I had not heard your announcement in full yet. Like I hadn't heard the whole story. I just caught the end as I was going back in the green room. And so, in the last 8 weeks, like something's really been happening with me and in our house. And like, I knew something was coming with you. And then when you stood up, when I heard you after that, and you said beginning of June-ish, I was like, oh, this is creepy. And so I had started praying. I was like, Lord, why did you tell me I'm not an inner circle with you. We know you guys and we see you at church and we conversate and we're part of ministries with you guys. But, I'm not in an inner circle. I don't work at the church, none of that stuff. And I've asked him like daily. He hasn't answered me, just so you know. But I'm like, why did you put that in my spirit? Like, why did I need to know? Why was there a preparation? And so what I felt like that morning when you came off and I was there, and the reason I shared it with you was because, like, I felt like in that moment you needed somebody to look at you and tell you this is right. Like, God put this in somebody who has no business knowing your business, but this is right. And there was such a proudness for you to be my pastor. And I texted you and told you that in the last season, the last year of my life has definitely not been the script that I thought God had handed me in the beginning. Like, he not only did he flip it, he like hit me on the head with it a few times. But what a moment to see a pastor who a year ago stood with me and sharing my story and said, I think this is amazing that God's calling you to something and you're walking away from everything else and doing it. And then it's not been easy. It's been hard because things don't come with directions with God. But then to see you do it, it's like, if he can do it, I know I can keep doing it. And I know I'm not the only person in that room who's walking through and doing things. And so, like that. But I just felt like what a gift for you to walk out and for me to be able to tell you, like, I know for our church, this is right. And I know for you, this is right. Even if I do it in a real awkward way. But it's just so big. And so, I already told you thank you for that. But it's amazing. But I do have to say, I did see what you did with that sermon. And I told Paul Taylor on you yesterday, I said, Paul, you'd be really proud of him because he set him up. He did a very pastory move. And he gave this beautiful opening that tells you all the things you should do and when God calls and you should do it. And then he goes and then he hit him with it at the end, didn't he? And I said, he hit it with him. He said, let me tell you how I'm modeling this. And then devastation breaks out in the mid. I was like, but really, he set everybody up. Like in your brain, you'd be going, that's so good, Pastor Matt. I think I can do those things. And then he delivers.
Yeah.
And I'm doing it.
It's funny, Miranda, because in the staff meeting on Tuesday, one of the staff members said, I've been through a part of these types of things several times, but most of the time it's like, hey, here's a sermon, here's the points of the sermon, and then it's like, okay, let's pray. Okay, now we have like a business meeting, like family meeting thing. And I thought, that's not the heart. That's never been my heart, number one. And really, that's not the heart of the way that this church is because of the relational aspect of the Met Church, the way that we value relationship. It starts from the elders and it goes all the way through even like the janitorial staff. Like everybody models this so well. And it just would have been antithetical to our DNA for me to go into a business meeting. It just wouldn't have been the right thing. And the irony of that, by the way, is that so me and our teaching pastor, Scott, and a couple other guys, we get away every June, July, and we plan the messaging for the following year, which means this particular week one of this series that landed on this idea of doing all things to the glory of God and for the kingdom of God first. That idea came in June of 2022, and I'm in November of 2023 preaching it, and it's my life we were talking about. And I didn't. And
you couldn't have known that in 2022.
That's the kind of stuff that people don't understand. We don't just get up there and just go, whatever the Lord lays on your heart, you can do it. It's going to be fine. I'm like, no way. We're going to be planned. We're going to be intentional, and we're really intentional. I mean, I think it's one of the banners of this church. And for me to go, you can be as intentional as you want, but God is still sovereign. Mm-hmm. And he knows exactly what he's doing and why he's doing it.
That's so good.
And it just was a reminder to me as I prepared for the message. And it was hard to prepare. Jennifer just, when are you going to? And I was like, it's just not coming. And I'll be honest, right up till the night before, I just had a few sparse thoughts. I couldn't collect myself. I didn't know what I was going to say. And then I sat down, I turned on a football game on mute because that's kind of, I don't really care about the commentator part. And she and Claire were talking about something and I just opened my computer and I was like, I know exactly. So I know exactly. And God just dumped it in me. I was like, okay, there it is. And then I saw the way, to your point, that it teed up my own story, and I realized, okay, this is how this needs to happen. And I think that the response of our people in that moment really showed me, number one, that I'm loved, but number two, that they, exactly what you said, you know what, I think that he is modeling this, and it makes it that much easier for me to do it. Do you know how many emails I've received in the last 7 days?
I was going to ask you, they put that big email, the Roberson family. I was like, has the email shut down yet?
It has not.
Well, that's not for us. I think they're doing something else with that. But
it says we love
personal.
Matt or something. We love Matt at the Met.Church, and people are sending like, hey, listen, I just want you to know.
Right.
And I'm getting these emails, and I get, I get a few. So that, or text messages from friends, almost all of them say the same thing. Hey, God was calling me to do something a few weeks ago, and I've just been wrestling with it. But watching you walk this out gives me the courage to do what I feel like I'm responsible to do. I was like, wow. So I think that's just my encouragement to anybody listening is don't underestimate. It's not just about you, because God can use your obedience to affect the obedience of someone else.
Yep.
Because you don't really know who's watching. You don't know who's paying attention. And ultimately, it's all, this life exists for his glory anyway. It doesn't exist for my reputation. That's been a hard lesson. It's not about my brand. It's not about MattRobersonMinistries.com. That doesn't exist. It's not about the Met Church here in Houston. It's about the kingdom of God. It's about the plans of the Father and the will of the Father. Even when Jesus came, even Jesus himself said, hey, if there's any way that your will could be another thing than me dying, that would be awesome. But not my will, but yours be done. Even the Son said that to the Father. That's the posture that he modeled, which gives us the courage to then model that for others. So it's super important that, if you're listening today, I don't know where you're at, but if God's calling you to do something specific and you feel the nudge from the Spirit and he's confirmed it in his word and through circumstances and other things, just take the next step. To Jennifer's point, it might look black behind it. You might not be able to see what lies beneath the water, but get your feet wet. Because I don't know what's coming, but I do know this. We've done this enough. I know that it's good for us. I know that. This 15 years ago, we didn't want to move to Houston either.
It's true.
So you're like, well, I kind of recognize this feeling.
and now we're mourning.
It just
we're
shows us we can't be trusted. Our emotions about
right.
anything cannot be trusted.
Right.
And even when Matt says, I know what's coming, I was thinking about when I was in college and doing some traveling, in the verse in Psalms that says, your decrees are the theme of my heart, no matter where I lodge. Just realizing that God is at work everywhere, and that honor and privilege that he invites us into that. We will see his goodness in the land of the living. We'll see fruitfulness. I pray in Marlow, just doing what we know to do. It's, it's going to look different. It's a rural area. It's a small town. There's just people that need to be loved there, and there are people that need to be led. Right. So
Matt's doing a really good job keeping it together, but I'm going to rat him out on Sunday. This was a hot wreck of a mess over here. Definitely. And mainly, like you said, you did not want to go. Well, I would use present tense, but you do not want to go.
It just doesn't make sense in my economy. And so I'm just like, what the heck is going on here? But again, this is why, I've said this for years, obedience brings blessing and disobedience brings consequences. I've parented with that mantra. I've coached, high school sports with that mantra. So how can I not live that out in front of the people that I'm leading? So here's the deal. If I'm disobedient in this moment, does the Met Church want me at the helm? All these good things and all the blessings that God has given, I'm going to be potentially putting those things in harm's way if I don't obey. And I just didn't understand why it had to go forward without me. When I read passages in the Bible of David having fought all these battles and it's time to build the temple. And so he starts getting everything together and God has to tell him, hey,
it's not
you. You fought too many battles. You got too much blood on your hands. It's actually your son. And David, I'm sure, was like, he did his part, right? He began to collect things, but how difficult it was for him. How hard was it for Moses to lead the people for 40 years?
and not be the one who sees
But
it.
because of disobedience in a moment, the closest he ever got was before he died. He took him up to a mountain and let him look at it from a distance. He didn't get to go there. And I'm not saying that it's because of some, massive thing that I'm holding, some sinful act that I just can't tell. It's not that. But to see that in the grand scheme of things, God's will, it is not about me.
Yeah, it's more of the consequence of what happens if you don't follow in the act of obedience, knowing that he's given you all of these little hidden treasures and signs. Because it's not like you can keep your head under the rock and play stupid. Like, I didn't see that, Lord. How? I mean, he's giving you a bride right here who's batting up with you and going, hey, man, I don't like this either. But we can't turn.
Yeah.
We can't turn our head on this. Like, so it's like he gave you a helpmate.
Yeah.
To help you.
That's right. That's right.
And nudge you.
And even more than being fearful of like disobedience and the consequences of that. I was talking to Claire about this because very valid questions coming from my junior who's God is just ministering to her and taking care of her heart too. And I'm so just encouraged by that. That's everything to me. What I was explaining to her, more than stepping out in disobedience, it's more we don't want to step out of alignment with his favor and his blessing. We know what fruitfulness feels like, and we know what his favor feels like, and we just want to stay in line with that. So if he's moving, we want to move with him. We want to go. And so I love that Matt and I have always tracked with that, no matter where we've gone. Even when we left our first sweet little church when Matt was in college and a worship pastor, we had at least one interview. And we were just baby married, didn't know what we were doing. And it wasn't the right fit. It wasn't a church. It wasn't the right church for us. And then feeling what that felt like to lock in and be there. And then when he comes home one day, and I remember where I was at when he said, hey babe, I've finally gotten clarity. Like we're done. Like we've been released, meaning God's allowing us to step away. Just lockstep on that. This transition just felt and looked different, but we know what it is to stay in alignment with him. And I don't want anything. I won't stay somewhere that I love and jeopardize that.
So in your blog, and you mentioned it too Sunday, in your blog, you write about you have a regret that you didn't bring the elders to comfort and give intercession. And I think people like me who don't work in a church and don't see all the back door happenings, I wouldn't say that was by accident, because God designs things, but it's clear in your heart. And I know you mentioned it too, that you've struggled with the fact that you didn't bring them in. Why is that so heavy for you guys? That didn't transpire? Because I don't know if that's normal. Like, is that the way things normally work? Like, I'm not a church person.
Normally is husband and wife wrestle it out, figure it out, pray it out, make the decision, have all the conversations in secret with the other church, and then they come back and be like, hey, this is what we're doing, whatever.
Which is kind of what happened here.
It is.
Okay, because I just wanted to make sure I understood the process.
With the leadership and the relationship that's been cultivated and the spiritual covering that our elders are and have been, in accountability for us as a couple and Matt as a person, not just as the senior pastor at the Met, we realize looking back, by all means clarify, Matt, if you feel like I'm not representing that accurately. And I don't know at what point we would have brought them in just for, hey, this is what God's doing in our life. We've done that with them in other domains. So to have this major transition and not have them interceding for us, or maybe walking in their grief process earlier than just pulling the rug out and the answer, like we didn't take them on the journey with us at all. And I think hindsight, we wish that we would have done that differently.
The reason I remember, coming on the backside of this, and, Jennifer said, like, I think we were talking on the phone, and I was like, man, I wish I would have brought them into it. And she's like, yeah, but this is, it might have been her said it, or I can't remember who said it, but it was this concept like, well, that's how everybody does it. And I said, yeah, but we're not everybody. The relational context that we've built here, and I'll say this to any pastor, any leader that's listening, I would put it up against any culture of any church we've ever been a part of, any. And so when you do live out this relationship with God and relationship with each other mission, these men that surround me and are my accountability, the guys that I talk about the big things of the Met with, what I should have done in hindsight is say, hey, listen, Jennifer and I are feeling something a little strange and we don't know what it is. And I need you to walk with me through it no matter what it is. And then they would have been checking up on me. Well, it's funny you say that, right, Matt? God told me this, or I talked to Jeremy Ferguson and he felt like you don't know how God would lead people to. There might have been more confirmation there. Or think about what happens when I get to the end of a 2.5 month with 7 men. And they're all like, we've watched this from the beginning and we know that God's calling him. It's a very different conversation to say we have the responsibility to obey God and to send him, as opposed to, hey, I'm sorry, but as I go. And I'm like, man, I could have modeled something so different. And I, for future reference, that's just a learning curve for me as a leader. And if you're a leader and you don't have that around you, you're really missing out on walking through these life transitions where the script is flipped. You're not intended to walk through these things alone. Well, what's a pastor supposed to do? He's supposed to walk through it with other fellow leaders. And that's the purpose of those overseers in the church. And a lot of churches don't have those people in position. And I would encourage you as a church, put them in play. Put those men in place, those overseers, so that you have brotherhood and camaraderie and you can step forward knowing that you're not just on a crazy train. Because I was fighting her basically, and I wasn't fighting her, but I mean, I'm Jonah. I'm like, forget it. She's like, how can you ignore it? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not ignoring it, but don't talk to me. Right? It was just
but don't talk about it.
But don't talk about it. Write it down so I don't have to read it. If I would have had a couple of guys from my eldership walking through it, I would have said, you're not going to believe what happened. They would have started looking at each other like, do you think God's in this? Do you want to? And they would have been praying with me through it. And my support in that. So I got asked by one of the search team members in Marlow, once we actually committed, he's like, how are you feeling? His name was Aaron. And I said, Aaron, can I be really frank with you? He's like, he got real nervous. And I said,
maybe not.
I kind of feel like I'm cheating on a girlfriend. And that's how I feel. It's just not right. I know that what I'm doing is something's not, I'm not saying that God's not in that, but I'm telling you that I feel like I'm with somebody. And I'm stuck because I've got affirmation in this direction, but affirmation in that direction, and they don't know about it, and I haven't had that conversation.
And I'm here with you, and yeah.
So that's how it feels, and I was like, okay, let's. So, I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have done it differently. I would have brought those people in earlier, and I would have taken the risk, and it could have cost me, but I don't think it would have.
But isn't that how where growth comes from in situations?
Yeah.
Like you learn that now, and maybe it was not appropriate for this situation, even though it feels that way. But you don't know down the road where it could come into play again. So, I mean, that's kind of a gift.
I think it did inform how he communicated to the staff going forward. Would you say that it did? Just your one-on-ones and your care of and stewarding of the story. I think it was.
I could have. Because of that decision, I decided to exit very differently. I didn't just get in front of the staff and read a letter. I actually met with several staff, my leadership team, several other staff one-on-one. Then I met with every team. And then after that, I met and did a debrief with the whole staff. I mean, that week.
I don't know how he did it. It was literally inhumane. I mean, like standing and receiving the flood of grief over and over and over and over. I mean, I think I was just a part of 2 personal tellings, and I'm like, peace out. I mean, if people peace out, not like I want to leave, but people can find out on Sunday. I can't keep doing this.
Right.
Even my children struggled with that. Having, dear relationships that you want to communicate this story to in a personal, meaningful way, but we just didn't have any gas in the tank. And then here he's getting up every day and just making himself
doing it again,
do it
again.
Because it was the loving thing to do for your comrades and your colleagues that have been in the trenches with you.
And still modeling. You're still modeling because you don't know where each of these people at the Met are going to go one day and what they're going to do. And so we're still modeling how to do this effectively with the people you literally are in relationship every single day of your life. And so, I mean, that's huge too. So as I was sitting in church and I was actually hearing it for the first time, I had this random thought about your daughter, Chloe. I remembered that it could have been this year. Chloe was going to go to college and she was trying to figure out where she was going to go. And then I believe, and if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong, but like somewhere in the last hour, she decided to go to OBU, right?
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay. So, and again, there should be no reason why I remember these things. I just should not. But in that moment, as everybody I see sitting around me, you heard the gasp. And then you start hearing tissues and purses and people chattering. And, we hold our spot down on the front for my ADHD purposes. And I'm hearing it and I'm looking around and I'm feeling a little guilty myself because I'm actually having a very joyful moment, not because you're leaving, but because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? I'm like, I wish I could stand up and go, it's gonna be okay.
Like you wanted to testify.
Yeah, when they'd be like, I'm telling you, God told me it's okay. It's gonna be okay here, Matt. I promise. God's got this. But you can't because first off, we're not in a Pentecostal church. And second, I might get ran out. And third, I don't know what third is. But in the moment, instead of, all that, I have this little dropping in my spirit about your daughter and how God had set the stage and sent her to Oklahoma before you. Because I think God knew that this was going to be this hard and he needed to keep y'all together so you could do this together. And so he put her there and then allowed you to start going there more. And so if we're going to be really frank about this, you had one leg in Oklahoma and you had one leg in Houston, and he just needed to convince you to put it over the fence. But I just in that moment, it just came out of nowhere that I prepared the way, Miranda. I even sent their daughter back. And now I'm sending them back. And they're going to be together and they're going to be okay. And I was like, man.
Yeah.
You were so good and you were being so good to them. But I think that comes again from being obedient. The blessings come in the walks of obedience. And I mean, there's just no denying that. And you guys, I love what you say, Jennifer. I am beyond blessed that Matt Roberson will be my pastor for the rest of our lives. I'm the luckiest girl in the world because no matter where Matt Roberson pastors, you're going with him.
Yeah, it'll come up at work sometimes when people will say, "Oh, where do you go to church?" or whatever. I'll say, "I go to my husband's pastor there, so that's kind of where I need to go, but I love it anyway." Like I just kind of throw that out there.
Wasn't really any other good churches out there, so I just stayed with that.
In case it gets awkward and people are like, "Oh, I used to go there, but I don't like that new pastor," or whatever. I just don't want it to get there, so I just like.
Go ahead and head it off.
Yeah, let's just get it out on the table real quick.
So let's talk about your girls for a minute as we kind of come in for a landing here. So I know they were both there Sunday, and I saw them and their friends, and I thought, oh gosh, so they're catching it from all ends, and I cannot imagine what that must feel like. But Chloe is already there. She's already there. So. And you guys coming is not a horrible, that's a good thing for, even if she doesn't know it as a
to be clear,
freshman.
She was not happy about this.
Why? Because you were coming to Oklahoma?
Because we're taking her home away from her.
Right.
Her place of comfort.
To come back to.
She's a kindergarten first grader when we got here. So this is all she knows in terms of what she remembers. She remembers nuances and little things. But in terms of all of her significant relationships,
and life events.
It's all been Houston. So it's all been in this house, and it's all been at this,
with these people,
this church. Yeah.
So before, I'm, the first thought might be, oh, she's got to be so excited. I'm like, yeah, no, I think we'll get there. But it's a huge, grief for her as well, because she is not in a place that feels like home yet, being in her first semester of college, and significant relationships being here, and just comfort being here, what's familiar. And knowing us moving, that unlikely at her season of life that she would ever feel that in the new place that will be vested and nested. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
The
she's right
memories
about
aren't,
that.
the memories
It's not gonna
aren't
be the same.
there.
It's not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So that's been her, initial. As far as Claire goes, when I say that the Lord had just been, I would say just very sweetly seeding, even though, again, nobody's saying, send me. Little subtle things like a prayer experience that she had at school while we were kind of in the thick of wrestling about, God praying for your future and giving you the desires of your heart. And he, she snapped it and sent it to us on the family chat, just like, hey, look at the prayer station I was at today. Even as near as Sunday, on her prayer journal, I guess, that she was taking the sermon notes on, she said the verse at the top was Romans 8:28, God works all things for good. So just little things like that, that I know that God is kind of ministering to her. She actually was a pretty significant part of we had gone those 2 weeks, and Matt reached out to the team and he's like, I'm so sorry, but I just need some more time. And we're, wrestling it out, and we're like, holy cow, like we can't drag this team on, but we're just sick about, maybe not wanting to say where we're feeling. And the girls were very aware of that wrestling at that point. And I had gone to work and then screenshot this little daily calendar that had such a profound, timely word that spoke of grief. It spoke of you're wrestling with a big decision right now. And it had Ecclesiastes 3:1, that there's a time and a season for everything. But I have something new, and I have growth on the other side. And I didn't say anything. I just snapped it. It's got the date on it, and sent it to Matt. And he's like, holy cow. So that night, when we're with Claire in the living room and we FaceTime Chloe and shared that we got the confirmation that we were asking for, Claire had said specifically that morning, she usually goes to school early and kind of does her quiet time in the car, and said that she had asked God to give Matt clarification. And he did. And I just love that, she was a specific, a significant part of that story, and that, God takes care of our kids. One of my most significant imprints that God had given me, I was reading in Numbers for a Bible study that I was teaching, and kept reading too far. You read what you're supposed to be, and then sometimes you just keep reading. And that, I think it was Numbers 14:33, where it said, your children will not be plunder in the land that I'm sending them to. They're gonna thrive in the land. You could have 1 million podcasts on kids that for whatever reason have been plunder in ministry moves. And I was like, we'll not be having that. We'll not be having that. And God giving that confirmation in that verse is literally everything to me. And he's already bringing that to fruition and showing some seeds. It seems like a silly story, but the more I look back now that I'm not in sackcloth and ashes, and I can kind of set up a little bit and look around, kind of see some things, whether it's Chloe's call to OBU, which we do believe that was a call from the Lord. I had her at Arkansas. All my money was on Arkansas. I went on all those visits with her. It was Arkansas. And then she's like, no, it's not. With tears coming down her face, it's OBU. Whenever, I lost what my train of thought. When Claire started this semester this year, she had not been doing sports, and at the last minute wanted to do choir. I'm like, oh, good. She'll have something to do, connect with her people. So excited. We're up at the school, day before, 2 days before. It's not happening. Oh, so sorry, we can't do it. I'm like, are you stinking kidding me that you have a kid who wants to be in choir and you're telling me you cannot
down the door for
make
choir?
the algorithm happen in her schedule because of what she takes, and she can't be in choir? I was To say that I was upset was probably an understatement.
A little bit.
I persisted and said, what do we need to do? Do we need to reallocate here? What can we change? Even if she didn't meet criteria for it, let's do it. This is ridiculous. And it was, I'm so sorry. It just doesn't work. And I do remember like half praying, half talking to God, half angry, half like, why in the world would a kid who's not got her sport anymore, her sister's gone, she just stinking wants to be in choir? Why can that not happen? What I feel in this moment is that he was leaving her roots dangling. That's how I feel in this moment. It was a little reminiscent of a nursing major 23 years ago trying to shove in a music minor, and my schedule got thrown off and I had to change some of my sightseeing, ear training, something, and I was so ticked that it wasn't jiving. Went to ask, hey, what else can we do? What else can we do? And it threw me into a class with a transfer student from the University of Idaho named Matt Roberson.
And your life was forever changed.
And my life was forever changed. So you'd think I'd get the picture when things aren't clicking on a class schedule or anything. Let's just go with it. But I do see now that is one of the ways that God has cared for my child.
Well, as you put it,
transition.
as you put it, he continues to give manna for each day.
So I'll give you another one. Matt and I started Bible study called Detour.
Can I ask when? I just wonder.
Carrie, the mom of our dear family member who lost her daughter, texted me the bio of the book. And I said, oh my gosh, I need this. And I told Matt about it. And he said, let's do it together. So we ordered it. We started it. And of course, Detour, I don't have to unpack for you, just the road signs and the delays and I thought I was going to get there in this direction and now I got to go this direction. And why is that? And Matt, I haven't even tied this together, but when I was doing it this morning, one of Matt's initial imprints about a stirring was a dang construction sign in Oklahoma City.
I had visited the student ministry that was at camp, and I couldn't make it for the whole week because of everything else on my schedule. So I decided I would fly up for a day, take a rental car over. I always want to spend time with the students. Like it's a huge piece of that. And so I was leaving the last morning. I stayed the night on campus, got in the rental cars, driving back to the airport, and I look up in the construction zone on I-35 going north, actually, to Oklahoma City Airport, and I look up and it says, why don't you come home and help us rebuild Oklahoma? And I had just heard something the night before. One of the youth pastors from Oklahoma that's a friend of mine named Jake, he's like, dude, are you ever going to come home? We need you in Oklahoma. You're ever going to come home and help us out? So that was the first thing. That was the mid-June part. And that was, now we're in July, and I'm seeing this sign, and I'm like, I mean, a literal sign.
But
and I texted to Jennifer. I'm like, isn't that cute?
Isn't that?
Yeah,
it was
isn't
just
that
like
really
a thing.
cute?
Isn't that
But
cute?
as
That's so
I'm
nice.
doing the Detour Bible study this morning, I'm seeing hindsight, kind of looking back over my shoulder.
All the things.
All of it just kind of coming. So when I say manna for every day, I mean, it has been, if it's not every day, it's every other day of some kind of significant affirmation. And he is so good to give it. Otherwise, all that to say, it continually orients us, because as more people find out, as we are truly facing the reality of a sign, for sale sign in the yard, it wrecks you again. And yet you have that manna every day that comforts and calms and fills. And you're like, okay,
I can do it.
This is the way walking it, right?
Yeah.
And then he's probably going to give me something tomorrow morning, because I need that for him. And it's a desperation from him. This fall, I jumped in with both feet, partly because I'm not sitting in bleachers and stands all the time watching a kid play ball. Jumped into Bible study. In the study that we did this fall is, again, the timing of it with our family members' loss. I was on the schedule to teach Lament the Wednesday after that. Mm-hmm. And I was a blubbering idiot through the whole thing. And of course, the sweet ladies in the room knew the story. They did not know the dual grief that was happening.
Like the lament literally happening in your heart.
Yes, in our extended family and in my life, lament. And one of the significant verses, not only that ministered to this family, but in this study was about, I think it's Psalm 3:3, where the Lord is the lifter of my head. And it gave me a veil of covering for all of my tears for the entirety of the semester of Bible study, which those sweet ladies had to endure, that they could not know the full extent of what was going on, but they at least could understand the difficulty of the loss. The last week of Bible study, I was teaching on Jesus' prayer in John 17 about the unity of the bride, and unpacking John 13 through 17, where you have the disciples frustrated, angry, disoriented, that their leader, that they have left everything to follow, is prematurely leaving them. And they are asking a lot of questions about a lot of details. Who's going to betray you? Where's the Father? Just show us the Father. Where are you going? And he's answering them, as Eugene Peterson says, with non-answers. He's answering everything they're saying, but he's not answering factually and coherently and clearly as you and I would understand it. But he's answering in a way that speaks to them leaning into him more than what they thought they needed, right? The specifics of the situation. And one of the phrases from my study time had been that it obviously Jesus knew it was time to go, and a critical mass had been reached in the disciples, even though they would continue to bumble and fumble, even within hours, right? And go back to fishing and wonder, what was that? What the heck was that all about? But Jesus knew the work had been done and that they were headed in the right direction. Obviously, my husband is not Jesus Christ, the Savior.
No, he's not.
Not anywhere close.
Correct.
Out, Matt.
But me,
I don't think anybody was asking.
Standing in front of that room, going through that content with those women in the same way Jesus knew what was coming, but the disciples didn't. And I knew what was coming on Sunday, but those women didn't. Nobody on the planet could convince me that God was not all over that, in the same way of Matt's timing with the Apply to All series, starting out with Seeking First the Kingdom on his kingdom timeline. I mean, it's like, I just get so humble. I'm like, why do you even care? Why does he care with that much detail and that much intent of me marinating in that beautiful last few days before Jesus went to the cross, and just getting to share that with those women that I hoped that they would marinate too. I think only, if I'm remembering the timeline right, only one of our elders' wives knew at that point. Mm-hmm. And she's coming up to me, like tears in her eyes before it starts, like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is the week that we're on and you're walking through this. And I go, yes. And if you could just pray that I could keep it together for the next hour and a half, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a nice day. I was just, again, looking at the entirety of the picture, yes. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to share my story and empty myself of my words about it with the blog, just telling of his faithfulness and allowing people to go on the journey with us. I thought Matt did such a great job of that on Sunday.
He did.
But I just had more words too that I wanted to share from my vantage point.
And it's a different perspective.
It is, yeah.
And because men and women, as you know, that we're different and we move differently. But what a beautiful portrait you paint of two people who are moving differently, yet at the same place, just in a different way. And you said, why does he care about these details? And you hit it right on the head, because he's faithful. And he already knew. He goes before you. The Bible tells us, you've preached this 1,000 times. He goes before us. And so he already knew. He knew the end of the story, and he knew all the things you would need, and he just lined it up. Even to the silly little details of the silly little things, he just lines it up. Because it has to point back to him being faithful and him being a good father. And a good father does that for his children. And so I think that's the answer. And it's funny, we were talking about direction right there, because I was driving home from my third trip to Hobby Airport today. And I was using my GPS to manage traffic, because I was trying to get here to meet you guys. And, you know, Houston is not Oklahoma. There's not
a little bit of people on the road.
There's not 4 cars on the road. There's 4,000, and they all come out when I need to come home. And so I've got my GPS in my hand, and Houston traffic, you know, those drivers aren't the kindest in the world, and everybody's cutting everybody off and honking and going. And I'm just like, just get me home, just get me home. And all of a sudden I had this vision with my GPS of how God can be like a GPS. So we type in the destination, you know, he gives us a destination and we put it in, and there's the directions. Like, this is how you're going to get home, and here's some traffic, and I'm going to do this, and you know, go this way, take that turn. But in that moment of my thought, I got redirected. It said, traffic's moving faster than expected. We're going to redirect you. Now, I'm still going to go home, but I'm going to redirect you. And I went, oh man, I've seen that so much in my life in the last year. I see it in other people's lives. And here we are today talking about how you guys had an address in the GPS. Mm-hmm. And God said, that's good. And you've enjoyed 13 years, but I'm going to redirect you, and I'm going to take you home. And home in the sense of where he wants you to be.
That's exactly right. That's where home is.
Which is where, when I hear Matt talk, I know you're not really, that's not your home roots, but it feels like to me, and I could be wrong, but it's where your ministry roots.
100%.
And so I've thought through weeks of all the things I was feeling, and then you announcing, I thought, you know, I know there's this, they need the help, come home and help. But to me, God just kept impressing on me that, no, we need to go back to our roots. It's time to go back to our roots. And I thought, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Because you going back to your roots, he's going to do something there with you. We know that. That's a promise. I mean, he does not send you there and you're not going to have any change in your life.
Wilt away and die, and that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're not just going to go there and fix the problem or help with the issue and bring this church together. He is going to use this not only to grow in your family, but to grow you, because you don't know what the next step is.
Right.
You don't know where he's taking you. And I think it's beautiful that he's taking you back there to your spiritual roots, and he's redirecting you home. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful picture. And even though you guys sit here with all the stuff, the houses and kids coming out of school early, and I know what that feels like to be uprooted, because we had 6 weeks to get from Alabama to here, and we lived in Alabama for 40 years and never anywhere else. And so our family was completely not happy with us. So I know that feeling, but I just feel in my heart that, like you said, you're going to get there, and it's going to be something like you could have never imagined. And I just love, again, that you're modeling that for not only the Met Church, but for the people listening who, I mean, I'm sure as a pastor, and Jennifer, in your walk, a lot of people go, I don't hear the voice of God. What does that mean? Because here we are for an hour talking about the voice of God, the signs, the manna. But there are a lot of people who would walk away, I think, from a podcast like this and go, I've never heard the voice of God. What are they talking about? So to that, Matt, what would you tell people who want to really hear the voice of God? They want to take those steps of faith that we talk about. They could even go to church Sunday after Sunday after Sunday and go, well, I want God to call me out, but I never hear him. Like, what would you tell them in this moment?
It's an awesome question. First of all, I would say you have to get used to his voice. And the way that you do that, the way that that's happened in my life, has been through my devotional life. So if you're inconsistent in your proximity and your time to him, then why would you expect to know his voice when he speaks? My dad, it's hilarious, when I was growing up, my dad used to have this whistle, and now I have the same thing with my daughters. If I whistle really, really loudly, to this day, if I'm within an earshot, my daughter will drop whatever. She's 17 or 19 years old. Am I lying here? No. She will drop everything she's doing, and she will run right to where we are. Just Doesn't matter.
It was very handy in the neighborhood when they were playing 5 houses down.
I bet it was.
I coached high school softball with my daughter, and I taught the entire team that. And they would all be doing drills, and I couldn't get their attention. And I'd go, if I whistle, you bring your glove or your bat, whatever you have in your hand, you don't drop it. You bring it with you, but you run to me. I said, let's practice. And I set them all up, and I whistled. Here they came. So, again, they got used to this. They got used to the rhythm of knowing what that meant. And I gave them those things in relationship and proximity, and therefore it meant something. And it's no different with God. You have to get in His Word. You don't have to spend an hour a day, but you need to begin your day quietly, and you need to win that day with proximity with Him. If it's a psalm that matches the date, if it's a proverb that matches the date, if it's a devotional from YouVersion, that app, if whatever it is, the more that you do that, the proximity begins to breed relationship. And then when He speaks, you just know that it's Him. It's actually not complicated. I have never heard the audible voice of God, but I also have, because of His Spirit in me and His Word and circumstances, there are times when I know, hey, this is just something funny that happened. And then I know, as in this situation that we've talked about today, He's talking to me. Mm-hmm. And I know the difference because of living in proximity with Him. So I think it's about relationship with Him, first and foremost, proximity to Him, time with Him. And it just...
Like you said, when your girls with softball, they learned your call. And when you're in close proximity with the Father, Scripture says, I know my Father's voice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know my Father's whistle. I know my Father's voice. I see it on the file folders. I see it in the dog. It's all over the place. But that's because you both are in close proximity to Him when it's comfortable and when it's uncomfortable.
That's right. Consistency.
Consistency.
Right.
So in these final moments, like the announcement's out, all the things are being done, put together. Where are your thoughts now? Where are your insights now? Now that the secret's out, you're not having to harbor that. Sitting here today, what is the tone? What is the temperature?
One of the verses in that John 13 through 17 that ministered to me deeply was where Jesus says He knew His time with them was coming to an end, so He showed them the full extent of His love. And I realized this month, 4 to 6 weeks, is going to fly by. I am very comforted in this moment that I'm not leaving now. Now, Matt's, last Sunday will be coming sooner than that, but as far as Claire's transition and my work transition will be a little later. And I've told my girls this, it makes, when you're not asleep at the wheel with your relationships and you're not taking them for granted, and I'm not saying we were, but when there's a timeline and expiration date on it, you really wake up. And already just having some dear friends that I've made effort to connect with over last month, last year, whatever. It's like, maybe. The phone is buzzing.
Urgent.
It's become urgent. And I treasure that. And I'm walking that actively out to do the things, spend the time as much as we can. Obviously there's limits with that, but even just that comforting word that, His physical time with them had come to an end and showing Him the full extent. I'll just say in the last 7 days, there's been some restoration and some forgiveness extended in some relationships related to the church that people just felt an urgency. I need to meet with you. I need to tell you something. Some discipleship steps that people have felt awakened to in the last week. Just all kinds of things. I'm praying that I would love for this month to just be full of just celebration and treasuring each other, encouraging each other, us expressing our gratitude and vice versa. When it gets down to the wire, I don't want to go borrowing trouble from tomorrow, but I do think it will be another surge of hard. But for right now, living, as you said, in the transparency, the openness of it, just enjoy people right now in our time here.
Yeah, my big takeaway right now that the word's out is no matter what happens, my responsibility. I'm learning to not change my posture toward anybody. So if so, I will leave poorly rather than finishing well. So even though I've got, I already have calls coming from our next situation, right? Like I already have things happening. People are asking, hey, when can we this? How can we this? What do you want us to do? What is Christmas Eve going to look like? I'm getting all these questions and I'm like, I don't live there.
Yeah. Excuse me. My zip code is still in Houston.
Let me sell my house for it. But in that, to be sensitive to them, but to still be faithful here. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I'm learning. Like, hey, it's okay to allow things to start to, excuse me, move this way, move that way. People here have to start taking a little bit of the mantle of my responsibility on them, Scott and Christian, other guys that sit in those seats. But as it pertains to relationship, to not just slow, we're done.
Right.
Like clip, I could have called and you say, hey, podcast. I'd have been like, yeah, you know what? Probably not. Like
we're a little busy right now.
We just can't do it. Why? Like, why do that?
This is the stuff of life. It's not the dang tasks that'll get done. I mean, they'll get done eventually. And I'm a task girl, but if anybody has lived that out before me, it's Matt, just prioritizing just the people and the connection and the time that we have left, and all the other stuff will get done. And when you bring other people into getting the stuff done, then that's even better too.
We had a birthday something for my family. My mom and I share a birthday, which is kind of cool. And we were going to do something for her tomorrow night. And one of my buddies who we were with today is our financial planner. And so we're talking, and his birthday's tomorrow, literally. And I was trying to figure out a golf thing, and he just lit up. He literally is like, dude, I would love to do that. We haven't got, and I just looked at Jen. I was like, we're going to do that. I'm going to do that with you tomorrow. I'm paying for your way tomorrow. I'm birthday golfing you. That's what I'm going to do.
Is that what that's called, birthday golfing?
It is now. And I had this moment of like, my mother, my family, my sibling, we're forever connected. I don't know the next time I'm going to get to do this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say never, but
yeah.
And I just thought,
not unless he's getting plucked up to Oklahoma too.
So highly doubt it. So it was just this moment of like prioritization. Don't change your posture. Like open your heart to people, finish well. And there's 1,700 adults at the Met, and 800 of them want to have dinner before we leave. It's hard. But it's the situation where it's like, do what you can while you can. Right. Just give it everything you've got. I can do anything for 6 weeks.
That's so crazy to hear you say 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
I know.
It's still amazing though. Okay, so as we wrap up, I usually ask my peeps that are here, I say, for the people listening who may be on the cusp of trying to take the next step, or they are scared to take the next step, either or, both, it doesn't matter who answers, but what advice would you offer people seeing where you're sitting right now and what you've walked through, which has not been easy, has not been fun. It's just been obedient.
Write it down. Every step of the way, get used to journaling the things that happen, the things you read. Write it down, because those little subtle things are just subtle things until they're not. And you realize, oh my gosh, there's been 17 of these things. And you can go back and categorize them and look at them. If you don't write it down, you could forget it. If you don't write it down, you'll forget the emotion. But as you write it in the moment, God sears it into the place of your heart of memory. And I say this to our church all the time. If you remember well, you worship well, because you can see and hear and feel his presence and hear his voice and see his hand in things. It's no different when even in your private life. When you open up your journal and you realize what he's been doing, the heartfelt worship that comes out of you when you know that God has been speaking to you is unlike anything on the planet.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my gosh, it's for real. If I had anything and they're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'd be like, write it down. I'm feeling something. I'm sensing a stirring here. God, are you speaking to me? Oh my gosh, I read this today. A.W. Tozer said this in a book. Hey, I heard this on TV.
I heard this in a song.
Heard this in a song. I was talking to Miranda at church and she said this and she didn't even know it, but that was the same phrase that I wrote down 3 days ago. God, if you don't write it down, you stop. It's almost like you quit. You're not looking. You're not attentive to his frequency, so you don't know how to tune him in. Write it down. That's what I'd say. Well,
stealing Nike's $1 million slogan, just do it. And we yesterday with Paul Taylor, we talked about faith as an action. Faith is not a noun. You have to do it.
That's right.
You have to be, it's action. Faith, for it to be faith, you have to be doing something that's a lot of times uncomfortable.
That's right.
It doesn't mean it's wrong. Jeremy and I had a conversation, and we were talking about something that was uncomfortable in my spirit recently. And he said, do you really think that's a God thing? Because I don't think God makes things uncomfortable. I don't think he does. And I said, oh, let's talk about Abraham and Isaac. Do you think that was comfortable? Well, that's different. That's different. I was like, no, I don't think that it's not that God doesn't make things uncomfortable. God has a plan, and we make it uncomfortable because we want God's plan to be our plan. Because we think that our plan is a good plan. Like, staying in Houston is a great plan for you guys. Mm-hmm. We would all love it. But that's not God's plan. Mm-hmm. But just because it's uncomfortable doesn't mean it's not going to be solid. It doesn't mean your family's not going to be blessed, flourish. I mean, right here, God told you your kids will not be in the plunder. Well, if your kids are not in the plunder, most likely you're not going to be in the plunder. Yeah. That's a promise from God. Mm. So, yeah, sometimes it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Sometimes it's painful. But that doesn't mean it's not right.
I wouldn't say, it says weeping lasts for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I can say, and having, left and transitioned from multiple churches, you can be crying and have deep-seated peace in your heart about that it's that he's been so clear. And we have done that before. This has definitely been next level with our grief, but I wouldn't say that we're walking in the fullness of the joy yet, but I can tell you that he is ministering to us deeply through the bride, through this beautiful bride that we have this time of sending out and separation, that the joy is coming. I can feel it. I can taste it. I'm not just weeping in sackcloth and ashes. So that's a good thing.
Joy comes in the morning.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Joy is going to come in just a few minutes because we're going to wrap this podcast up. Again, thank you guys so much. I do know that there's a lot. And I'm just honored that you came and that you shared your story. And what I've said through this whole podcast is I believe that that the podcast isn't about us. It's about the seeds that God puts out. And then that's our responsibility. We put the seeds out, and then God comes back and waters and prepares and does all the things with the seeds that God does. So what my hope today is that someone out there that's listening that's maybe struggling with an issue close to this or like this, that you will find some comfort and insight of some really seasoned people here who would have been really happy to be comfortable, but are choosing the path less traveled, and that they know that God is calling them to that. And I hope you find encouragement in that. And if you have questions, if this has sparked some things in your mind, or you need more help, or you're trying to find a church family to connect to and walk in this season with, because you are not made to walk in things like this alone. You need people. Right. Feel free to reach out to www.steppingfwd.org, and we would love to help you find a church in your area, to get you connected with people and to get you connected with the Lord, to walk through this. But besides that, that's all I got. Anybody got any last little thoughts and nuggets of jewels they want to drop on anybody?
There's a church in Marlow if you want to move to Marlow, Oklahoma. Okay, I'm just kidding.
But there's only 4 houses, so don't rush.
Now there's 3. Because we took one of them.
Okay, well, 3 families. There's an opportunity for 3 families in
3
Marlow.
families.
That's
3
it.
families, you can do this.
Nobody else. That's it. The cutoff in Marlow is 3 families. But if you hurry and act now, you can get in quick because there's a great pastor and family coming. Okay, all the real estates in Marlow owe me big time.
They do.
That's right.
All right, well, that's going to be it for us, guys. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. We hope that you come back next week for our next episode. And we're not going to say goodbye to you guys. We're going to just say see you later.
Sounds good.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Southern Soul Chats. We hope you found inspiration, encouragement, and valuable insights to carry with you through your week. We invite you to subscribe to Southern Soul Chats so that you never miss an episode. We are a branch of Stepping Forward Ministries, a 501c3 Christian nonprofit, and we kindly ask for you to consider making a donation today. Your contribution will play a vital role in sustaining the podcast and allowing us to continue sharing these impactful stories of faith. As you leave today, remember your story is a part of a bigger narrative, and your faith has power to guide your path. Keep stepping forward with hope, trust, and assurance that you're never alone. This is Dr. Miranda Ferguson. We hope you have a great week and keep stepping forward.